Lee Hamilton was responsible for part of the cover-up of the Iran-Contra inquiry. He was part of the cover-up for the October surprise. He was an excellent good friend of Dick Cheney, so he should never have been anywhere near that 9/11 Commission. But the individual who was in charge of the 9/11 Commission, who decided who would be questioned, what questions that would be asked, his name was Philip Zelikow. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Philip Zelikow. Philip Zelikow was a good friend of Condoleezza Rice. They wrote a book together back in the 90s. He was part of the Bush transition team, between Clinton and Bush. He wrote the preemptive war strategy that was eventually used for the Iraq War. In the 1990s, he wrote a report on the JFK assassination with someone by the name of Ernest May that was, quote, riddled with errors. During the 9/11 Commission, he rewrote the 9/11 report so it would be more favorable of Condoleezza Rice. And actually, after the 9/11 Commission, Condoleezza Rice gave Philip Zelikow a job at the State Department. Philip Zelikow shied people away from the NSA. The NSA has hardly been investigated with regards to the 9/11 attacks. He shied people away from Saudi Arabian, the Saudi Arabian royals' possible involvement in the 9/11 attacks, and he even fired one of the Saudi investigators of the 9/11 Commission. This is something when I found out about, I was floored. Before the 9/11 Commission even began, Ernest May and Philip Zelikow, Ernest May, the same person, the same people who wrote the book or the report on the JFK assassination, wrote a complete outline of the final 9/11 report before the investigation even began. And they decided to keep that outline a secret from the staffers so they wouldn't get this idea that there was this preconceived notion of what the 9/11 report would be at the end before it even began. In February of 2008, it was revealed that this so-called independent 9/11 commission that was run by Philip Zelikow was taking direction from Karl Rove, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff. Okay? That's wrong. And because of that, the Jersey Girls, the women who fought for the creation of the 9/11 Commission, called for an entirely new investigation. None of the mainstream media covered that, by the way. Don't you think that's newsworthy? These people were on the TV all the time during the Kerry campaign, and yet when they call for a new investigation, the media is silent. Now, the 9/11 Commission itself only answered 30% of the family's questions. The families deserve so much better than they got in the 9/11 Commission. When I found out that we were being lied to about 9/11, and I've said this before, I was angry. I was livid. But I can't imagine having that anger on top of having lost someone that day. I can't imagine it. And it's part of what motivates me to try and put myself in the shoes of a 9/11 family member. This is an absolutely amazing thing. Philip Zelikow tried to insert a false link tying Iraq to the 9/11 attacks into the 9/11 report. Did you know that? Can I ask, who would that have benefited? Can anybody tell me? If you have any doubts whatsoever as to who he was a lackey for, that should rest all of your doubts. Bush and Cheney refused to testify under oath. They refused to testify publicly. They refused any transcripts or any notes to be taken, any recordings to be taken. Now, that was one of the things, as I told you, they went to Tom Daschle's office and asked him not to investigate the attacks. Can somebody here tell me why the president and the vice president of the United States would refuse to testify publicly about the 9/11 attacks? Why? You know what happens when Dick Cheney testifies? Dick Cheney recently testified for the Valerie Plame affair within the last year and a half or so. And there was a record 73 do not recalls from that testimony. That's what happens when Dick Cheney testifies under oath. Now, that's just part of the problems with the 9/11 Commission, okay? The 9/11 Commission was an absolute farce. Their report was an absolute farce. Things that they omitted from the report, you wouldn't believe. There were whistleblowers who came forward, who tried to come forward to the 9/11 Commission, which was mandated to give a full and complete accounting of the 9/11 attacks, and they ignored and censored these whistleblowers. In November of 2007, and you're going to want to hear this, November of 2007 at the Hartford 9/11 Symposium, Jersey girl Patty Casaza came forward and said that during the time of the 9/11 Commission, there were whistleblowers who tried to come forward, who came to the Jersey girls in the hopes that they would put them in front of the 9/11 Commission. The information that some of these whistleblowers had indicated that this government, specifically the Bush administration, knew the day, the target, and the type of attack. And yet the 9/11 Commission refused to talk to these individuals, okay? So we did not get a complete story. Now, the 9/11 attacks were not an act of war, despite what John McCain and Joe Lieberman might be trying to say. They were a crime. They were a massive crime, all right? And in a crime, in any crime, you have a list of suspects. I believe, based on how diligently the people like Cheney and Bush tried to cover up what happened that day, tried to fight against investigating what happened that day, how they used what happened that day, how Dick Cheney was planning on divvying up Iraq's oil fields 5 months before 9/11, that they have earned the title of suspect for the crime of 9/11. Now, thank you. Now, if anybody has a problem with that, I have a question, and this is how the media covers this issue. Does anybody here worship at the Church of Cheney? Nobody? Nobody. There's no Church of Cheney. It's not blasphemous to ask questions of your politicians when they do questionable things, okay? Now, as I said, the post-9/11 world is the world where we are fighting these preemptive wars, where we're losing our civil liberties, where executive power is being multiplied by 1,000. If that day was not what we were led to believe, and I can guarantee you it was not what we were led to believe, then we need to know about it. Because that takes away the justification for the wars, for the wiretapping, for the torture. All right? So please, 9/11 truth activists are not crazy. We've been trying very hard for years to expose this cover-up, this important cover-up. So I hope that everyone here who's an anti-war activist starts to look into it a little bit and starts to listen to what people like me are saying, because we are not crazy. So thank you very much for listening. If you do have some questions, I'll be more than happy to take some questions.